Why you wouldn't survive a week in a Roman legion camp. Before we begin, what hour is it for you? Midnight, 3 a.m. Let me know in the comments, because I promise you're not alone. Welcome to Camp Misery, South. You've done it. You've joined the Roman legions. Maybe it was patriotism. Maybe a debt collector. Maybe your village just got annexed and some guy in a toga told you, "Congratulations, you're a Roman now." Whatever the reason, you now find yourself in a wind-blasted patch of nowhere, staring at a camp made entirely of canvas, sweat, and ominous shouting. The sun's barely risen, and already the stench of damp wool and collective regret wafts over the rows of tents like a divine punishment. Before you can even dismount your donkey, because horses are for actual citizens, a man with a chin like a battering ram shoves a wooden tablet into your hands and starts barking your new identity. You are now Lucius Nobody, son of no one, cohort 4. Your old name? Gone. Your dreams? Delayed. Your digestive comfort? About to be destroyed. The first thing you learn is that the camp is not a place for feelings. It's a place for lice checks and shouted instructions. You're immediately stripped naked, inspected for disease, branded with your legion's mark like livestock, and given a kit that includes one scratchy tunic, one even scratchier cloak, one dull blade, a kit bag full of guilt-heavy equipment, and a toothbrush made of twigs. If you ask questions, you get answers, but in the form of slaps. You try to find your tent. It's the one that looks exactly like all the others. You crawl inside and meet your new brothers in misery. 8 men who already hate your face. One of them is sharpening a knife, not for battle, just for emotional comfort. Another is asleep with his eyes open. You find a patch of dirt that seems least infested with beetles and claim it as your bed. There is no mattress, no blanket, just dirt and a piece of linen that smells like every failure in your bloodline. A horn blares outside. Your soul tries to leave your body. You're yanked to your feet by a veteran who tells you that formation training starts in 5 minutes, and if you're late, you'll get flogged until your ancestors feel it. You don't want to get flogged. You sprint outside barefoot because you haven't figured out how to tie your sandals, and line up with the other fresh meat. The Optio, second in command and first in anger, marches down the line like he's looking for someone to hate. He stops at you. Of course he does. You, he says, eyes narrowing like you just insulted the entire Roman Republic. Did your mother feed you olive oil instead of milk? Stand straight. You straighten. He slaps your helmet down over your eyes. The next 2 hours are a blur of shouted Latin, foot blisters, dropped shields, and someone vomiting barley gruel onto their neighbour's sandals. You march, you turn, you get screamed at. You're taught how to stab, not slash, because slashing is barbarian behaviour. You try to remember which end of the spear goes where. You fail. The Optio threatens to have you digging ditches until your great-grandchildren are born in one. Eventually, mercifully, there's a break. Sort of. You're herded to a muddy trench the soldiers call a latrina. It's a wooden plank with holes over a pit that smells like death. There's one communal sponge on a stick. Just one. You hesitate. The Optio sees you. Scared of a sponge, he sneers. Wait until you meet the Gauls. Back at the training ground, you're handed a wooden gladius, heavy, splintered, and designed more to injure your pride than any real enemy. You're told to spar. You get paired with a man whose biceps have biceps. He smiles. That's the last thing you see before everything goes dark. You wake up tasting blood and regret. The Optio says, "Good, you're learning." At dinner, you get a bowl of stew made of things. Meat? Possibly. You ask what it is. No one answers. You eat it anyway because the alternative is starvation. A guy next to you mutters something about rats. You pretend you didn't hear. That night, you curl up in your tent on a bed of gravel, wrapped in a cloak that holds more holes than fabric. Outside, someone is playing a flute badly. Someone else is sobbing quietly. You stare at the ceiling of the tent, which is also the sky because there's a rip the size of your existential crisis. Tomorrow, you'll do it all again, if you're lucky. If not, you'll be volunteered for latrine maintenance duty, again. And that's day 1. You wake up sore, not just slept weird sore. No, this is trampled by history sore. Every joint clicks. Your spine creaks like a catapult under tension. You sit up on your patch of rocks, and a beetle scuttles out from beneath your elbow like it too. Regrets enlisting. Outside, the sky is still black, and the camp is already alive with movement. Fires sputter, boots stomp. Someone is loudly trying to remember the Latin word for "I hate my life." A trumpet sounds somewhere near the command tent, followed by more shouting. You scramble to find your gear, which is somehow damp despite there being no rain, and rush out to line up before your centurion arrives. He's the one with a face like carved granite and zero tolerance for slowness, softness, or the concept of joy. He gives a speech, something about discipline, Roman glory, and how yesterday's marching was an embarrassment to Jupiter himself. You blink through the fog of sleep and stew gas, trying to focus. At some point he says the word decimation, and everyone around you stands a little straighter. You make a mental note. If your cohort screws up badly enough, 1 in 10 of you gets executed by the other 9. Motivational in a kind of psychotic team-building way. Marching begins again. The Romans believe in walking. Lots of it. Today's goal? 15 miles. In armor. Carrying your own personal fortress on your back. That includes a shovel, pickaxe, wooden stakes, cooking gear, spare sandals. You will grow to worship those sandals. And of course, your weapons. This is called the mule load. You are the mule. The road stretches endlessly. Your sandals, poorly tied, already worn, dig into your feet like they're angry at your ancestors. The sun climbs, the dust thickens. You march past hills, past trees, past some poor farmer trying not to look directly at you, probably wondering if you'll trample his barley field on the way back. At midday, there is a break. Not a lunch break, just a stop briefly so nobody dies yet break. You chew on hardtack, which is like bread if bread had a grudge, and drink lukewarm water from a goatskin that smells suspiciously like old cheese. Someone tries to tell a joke. No one laughs. A bee stings a man in the face. He's the happiest anyone's looked all day. Then it's back on the road. You pass a shrine. The veterans nod. You don't know who the god is. Probably one of the weird ones. You offer a quick, desperate prayer anyway. Something like, "Please don't let me collapse in front of everyone and become a cautionary tale." Eventually, blessedly, the signal comes to stop. You think you're done. You are not done. Now it's time to build the camp. Yes, every night. Every single night. Romans don't just sleep wherever they drop. They build a fortified mini-city with ditches, palisades, gates, latrines, and an organized street system. Before dinner, it's like Minecraft, but with more bleeding. The Optio hands you a shovel and points at the ground. "Dig," he says. You dig. It's gravel. Your shovel is dull. Your soul is dulled further. Next to you, another recruit is trying to figure out which direction is north, because he's been assigned to help align the Cardo, the main road. He suggests following the wind. He's punched by a Gaul who speaks better Latin than he does. As darkness falls, the camp finally stands, a marvel of efficiency, pain, and collective trauma. You wipe your hands on your tunic, which now looks like it's been through 6 wars. You sit. You want to cry. Someone hands you a bowl. It's stew again. Still unidentifiable, still warmish, still definitely food adjacent. Tonight, there's singing. Low, tired voices humming a legionary chant about home, or at least about ale. You hum along. Not because you know the words, but because it feels like the only thing keeping your legs from walking away without you. You glance at your feet. They're blistered, bleeding, and beginning to swell. Your sandals, those noble, traitorous sandals, have rubbed your toes raw. You know now why Roman soldiers carry spares, because the first pair always dies on day 1. As you lie down to sleep under canvas that does nothing to block the cold, you finally understand. This isn't training for battle. This is battle against the land, against time, against your own body. Glory, that might come later. For now, you are being broken down, reshaped, rebuilt, or destroyed. And this is only the first night. Congratulations. It's day 2, and you can no longer feel your feet. Well, not in the traditional sense. You're vaguely aware of them as hot, wet lumps somewhere below your knees, like 2 bags of soup someone nailed to the end of your legs. The morning trumpet blasts before the sun even considers showing up. You sit up, bones cracking like old pottery. and immediately regret every decision that led you to this camp. The man next to you is snoring through a nose whistle. Another is trying to scrape something unidentifiable off his shin. And you're peeling your socks off your feet like they're second skins, revealing blisters the size and colour of suspicious fruit. Outside, the Optio is already yelling. He's always yelling. Maybe that's all he knows how to do. Today, he's reminding you to check your caligae, the Roman marching sandals, which were clearly designed by someone who hated feet. Open-toed, hobnailed, and about as comforting as hugging a porcupine. You tighten the laces, wince, and immediately step on a rock that seems personally offended by your existence. Marching begins again. You thought yesterday was bad? Today makes it look like a gentle stroll through paradise. 15 more miles, but this time it's uphill, both ways, somehow. Your shield thumps against your back, your gladius digs into your hip, and your water skin sloshes like an unhelpful ghost whispering, "Should have stayed home." Within the first hour, someone drops their pilum, the Roman throwing spear. It clatters across the stones and nearly takes out another recruit's ankle. The centurion doesn't even flinch. "Dead in battle," he says dryly. "Would have saved us food." You laugh. No one else does. You pass a signpost with half the lettering worn off. It points to some town you've never heard of and never want to see. The Optio says you'll reach it in 2 days. He says this like it's a promise. You hear it as a threat. Around midday, you start to hallucinate. It's mild at first, just a shimmering ahead on the road that might be water or your hopes dying. But then you see a tree wave at you, not in the wind, like, actually wave. You blink. It's still a tree. You keep walking. That's what legionaries do. You don't stop. You don't complain. You just keep moving forward, like a very dusty, very angry automaton powered by shame and ancient carbohydrate reserves. Break time. You collapse next to a small stream. You resist the urge to soak your feet because you were warned. Wet feet mean trench foot. Trench foot means infection. Infection means a guy named Marcus hacking off your leg with a rusty saw while another guy named Publius holds you down and tells you to bite a stick. Instead you sit there chewing dried figs and trying to will your body to grow new skin. You open a wax tablet and scratch a quick note to your family. Something like, "Still alive, feet are not. Send prayers," or "New feet." Then it's back to marching, because of course it is. By late afternoon, you've entered a new dimension of pain. The soles of your feet feel like they've been replaced with gravel. Your thighs are shaking, your spine has given up. It's now just a suggestion of a spine. A veteran spots you limping and offers advice. Lean forward, pretend the pain's behind you. You nod like this helps. It doesn't, but it's either that or weeping openly into your own sweat. Finally, at dusk, the march ends. You don't cheer. That would require energy. Instead, you collapse in place and begin removing your caligae like they're cursed artifacts. Your feet are a mess. Raw, cracked, swollen. One toe looks like it's planning a rebellion. Someone near you chuckles and holds up a clay jar. "Vinegar and goat fat," he says, "for the blisters." You look at it. It looks moist. He shrugs and applies it to his own feet with a hiss. You decide to wait until desperation lowers your standards further. Dinner is a cold bowl of lentils and some crusty bread that could double as a weapon. You eat in silence, chewing slowly, blinking at the fire. You've marched for hours. Your feet are ruined. Your soul is somewhere back at mile 5, and the worst part, you have to do it all again tomorrow. There's a secret no one tells you when you join the Roman legions. It's not in the recruitment speeches, or the training manuals, or even scrawled on the latrine walls in bad Latin. But every soldier knows it. Ready? Marching never ends. It's not a thing you do, it's who you are now. You are legs. You are blisters. You are an upright, blister-wearing weapon who, ironically, spends more time moving than fighting. It's the next morning, and your feet look like bread loaves left out in the rain. You hobble toward the morning muster, where your Optio eyes the recruits like a wolf sizing up wounded sheep. "Still breathing?" he asks, not as a joke, but as a logistical concern. One guy didn't make it out of bed. He's not dead, just immobile from muscle cramps. The Optio lets 2 auxiliaries drag him to the medicus. He'll be given vinegar, a motivational slap, and maybe a prayer. Meanwhile, you're already marching again. This time you're headed toward a construction site. Roman soldiers don't just fight, they build. Roads, walls, forts, latrines, so many latrines. Today, it's a watchtower. The pile of lumber waiting for you looks like it was arranged by someone with a grudge against vertebrae. You and a dozen others are handed ropes and ordered to haul logs up a hill that clearly hates you. By log number 3, your shoulders have given up and your hands are blistered to match your feet. The sun is relentless. No shade, no breeze, just the sound of grunting, rope creaking, and someone humming a death hymn under their breath. At lunch, you eat what is technically called a ration, but should legally be labelled digestive speculation. Hard tack bread, olives with pits still in, and a handful of dried peas that bounce like stones when dropped. A veteran shows you how to soak the bread in water so it doesn't break your teeth. You do so, then realise the water smells faintly of goat. You eat anyway. Hunger doesn't have standards. Someone tries to trade their peas for a strip of your jerky. You don't know what animal the jerky came from, but it has protein, so you guard it like treasure. Sharing is noble. Surviving is nobler. The afternoon brings more marching, this time in formation. The centurion calls out pace and you practice wheel turns. Left, right, advance, tighten ranks. You try not to limp too visibly. Limping gets noticed. Noticed gets punished. A guy 2 ranks ahead vomits mid-step and keeps walking. No one reacts. That's legion life. You learn quickly what matters. Formation, discipline, cohesion, personal suffering. That's background noise. You're a cog in a human war machine, and if one cog breaks, another replaces it. Back at camp, you're ordered to dig a ditch, defensive perimeter, standard Roman protocol. You wield a dolabra, a combination pickaxe and shovel, and get to work carving the earth. Your hands are numb, your back is screaming. The sun's going down, but there's no sunset appreciation hour in the legions. Someone complains. Bad move. The centurion strolls over, taps his vine staff on the complainer's shin and says, "The earth won't dig itself unless you want to lie in it." The man digs faster. As darkness falls, the ditch is declared acceptable. Not good, not great. Acceptable. You wash your hands in a bucket of water that 4 other people already used. Then, with aching limbs, you join the others for night training. Yes, night training, because the enemy doesn't respect bedtime. You practice standing watch, rotating shifts, and signalling with torches. You learn how to interpret 3 short flame bursts as enemy approaching, 2 as false alarm, and 1 as I dropped the torch again. By the time you collapse onto your straw mat, the sky is a blur of stars and fatigue. Your body is sore in places you didn't know had muscles. You peel off your caligae and inspect the damage. 1 blister has merged with another to form what could be legally classified as a crater, you name it, regret. As you drift towards sleep, you hear 2 soldiers arguing about foot care. One swears by ash and lard. The other claims rubbing wine dregs into the soles toughens the skin. You silently pledge allegiance to whichever one stops talking first. Sleep is short. A trumpet blasts again before your dream even ends. You sit up, blisters scream, muscles creak, and somewhere in the distance you swear the road is laughing. You've survived another day, barely. It's morning again, which means you've survived another night of splinters, fleas, and the symphony of snoring men whose lungs sound like a sack of dying geese. You sit up slowly, every joint registering a formal complaint. Your shoulders ache, your legs have been replaced with cold iron bars, and your lower back has signed a letter of resignation. But hey, there's breakfast. You make your way to the food line, or what passes for one. It's more of a slow shuffle of broken spirits loosely arranged by hunger. A legionary ahead of you sneezes onto his own hand, wipes it on his tunic, and then reaches for a scoop of barley. Sanitation is a rumour here, like rest days or decent bread. And speaking of bread, they hand you a lump of barley dough that looks and feels like it was forged from old floor tile and regret. It's dense, greyish, and has the texture of a dried sponge that once soaked up blood. You knock it on the wooden table, it doesn't give. You knock it on your helmet. Still nothing. Someone suggests using it as a blunt weapon. You'd laugh, but your jaw already hurts from yesterday. There's a puddle of sour wine to go with it. Not wine, really. More like vinegar with dreams. You take a sip and it hits the back of your throat like betrayal. You cough. A veteran grunts, builds character. You'd like to build a time machine. Chewing the bread takes effort. You gnaw at it like a dog with a stolen boot. It crumbles in weird ways. Half sand, half sawdust. You find a pebble inside. You're not sure if it's part of the recipe or just a surprise mineral bonus. Either way, it chips a molar. A centurion strolls by and watches you chew. Just watches. You try to speed up, but that only makes it worse. Now you're choking on what feels like a dry mud ball. He taps his vine staff against your shoulder. Chew faster, recruit. You're not on a picnic. You want to say something clever. What comes out is half a wheeze and a chunk of barley. You think the Gauls are going to wait for you to swallow? He barks. You shake your head. You don't know what the Gauls have to do with this bread, but they already feel like they've won. The guy next to you tries to wash his bread down with water. Big mistake. The water is stored in an open amphora that's been sitting in the sun, collecting bugs and possibly spores from another dimension. He drinks anyway. Bold. He'll be seeing the medicus by noon. A veteran leans in. You know why they give us this bread, he says. Because it lasts forever. Doesn't go bad. Can't go bad. Was never alive. Then he laughs the hollow laugh of a man who hasn't tasted joy since the Punic Wars. Once you've managed to swallow enough to fake fullness, you're sent to clean your mess kit. No running water. Just a bucket of vaguely greasy sludge that's been reused for 3 days. You scrub with a rag that smells like fermented despair, then dry it on your tunic, which at this point is more bacteria than cloth. A trumpet sounds. Drill time. But wait. Surprise inspection. You're lined up like damp laundry and subjected to the Optio's version of hospitality, a full equipment check. He looks at your sandals. Frayed. He looks at your tunic. Filthy. He sniffs in your general direction. You smell like something crawled inside you and gave up. You consider apologizing. He moves on. You're not even the worst today. The guy behind you forgot to oil his gladius. The blade is slightly rusted. He gets latrine duty for a week and a kick to the shin for good measure. You pass. Barely. Probably because your sandals are still attached to your feet. For now. The sky is grey. The ground is damp. Your stomach is mostly empty. And your next meal? It'll be the same as this one, just a few hours older and slightly harder. You miss home. You miss your mother's soup. You even miss that one cousin who always smelled like garlic and betrayal. But you're here now, in the Legion. Breakfast is gravel, lunch is a rumour, and dinner is mostly prayer. And it's still only 8 a.m. You would think, after surviving breakfast, that your body would simply give up out of protest. But no, your stomach, now filled with what might be described as prehistoric construction material, has decided to launch its own rebellion. You clutch your abdomen, unsure whether you're digesting food or developing masonry inside your colon. But there's no time to linger. Your contubernium, the band of misfits assigned to share every misery with you, is already gathering their weapons. You grab your shield, your gladius, and try not to burp too loudly. The last guy who did that was sent to clean out the goat pens with his hands. Today's drill is organized chaos, or as your centurion calls it, unit cohesion. You call it trying not to die from internal bread compression while jogging in metal armor. First up, shield wall practice. You lock into formation with your comrades, arms pressed shoulder to shoulder as the centurion throws insults with the speed and accuracy of a professional javelinist. If the enemy smelled like you lot, Rome would surrender out of shame. Then he slams his staff into your shield, hard. Your knees buckle a little, but you hold the line, mostly out of spite. Good, he says. Now move forward. You all lurch forward like a badly choreographed centipede, one foot dragging behind the other. The shield of the guy next to you keeps slamming into your arm. You want to tell him to adjust, but he's already too busy trying to keep his own stomach contents from staging a full uprising. Half an hour later, you're sweating like a salted snail, your helmet sliding into your eyes, and the inside of your tunic feels like a boiled rag. The centurion blows the whistle and barks, "Gladius drills! Go!" You draw your sword and start stabbing a post made of straw and rage. Stab, retract, Retract. If you hit it wrong, it bounces. If you hit it right, it still hurts your wrist. The centurion walks up behind you. That was pathetic, he mutters. My grandmother stabs harder and she's Etruscan. You're not entirely sure what that means, but it sounds insulting. Somewhere behind you, a recruit drops his gladius from sheer exhaustion. The centurion doesn't say a word. He just glares, picks it up, and chucks it into the mud pit. Retrieve it, with your teeth if necessary. You've been training for over 2 hours now, and your bread brick breakfast has not moved. It's lodged somewhere between your soul and your large intestine. The sour wine didn't help. Your burps smell like wet bronze and existential despair. Next, you're assigned latrine digging duty because you forgot to lace your sandals correctly. The Optio claims it's attention to detail. You're beginning to suspect it's punishment roulette. He hands you a shovel so worn down it qualifies as a flat stick. You dig anyway. The ground is clay-heavy and moist. Every shovel load feels like lifting betrayal. Eventually, you hit something squishy and hope it's just old roots. A veteran nearby sees your face and laughs. "Welcome to Rome," he says, voice dry as desert wind. Lunch break rolls around. This means more barley, now rebranded as soup, which is a generous term for what is essentially barley water and a sad chunk of turnip. You get a small serving of cheese. You sniff it. Bold. It fights back. Mold, you assume, is considered flavour here. You sit on a log and stare at your meal. It stares back. One of the older soldiers joins you and offers unsolicited wisdom between bites of something grey. The trick, he says, is to stop expecting flavour, or joy, or gastrointestinal comfort. He grins, revealing a full set of teeth that clearly gave up sometime during the reign of Claudius. Eat for survival, not satisfaction. You nod, chew, and wonder how many generations of pain it takes to turn into that man. A trumpet sounds. Rest time. 20 whole minutes. You collapse beneath a sagging canvas shade, surrounded by groans, farts, and the sound of someone weeping quietly. You close your eyes, just for a second. Maybe you'll dream of fruit, or warm baths, or a god who hands out antacids. Instead, the Optio kicks your foot. Nap time's over, Legionnaire. The enemy won't wait for your digestion. You rise again, sword in hand, bread in gut, spirit somewhere under a pile of shame and sweat, and the day isn't even half over. You always imagined sword practice would be the cool part. Swish, slash, heroic pose. Maybe even a cloak fluttering in the wind as you deflect arrows with your sheer charisma. You were wrong. Instead, you're standing in a patch of overcooked mud behind the barracks, holding a chunk of wood vaguely shaped like a sword. It weighs more than a real gladius and less than your will to live. Across from you is your sparring partner, Gaius. Gaius is a man-shaped battering ram who once bit a javelin in half for fun. His biceps have their own biceps. His smile says, "This is going to hurt, and I'm going to enjoy it." The centurion blows a whistle and shouts, "Begin!" You raise your sword. Gaius raises his. There's a brief moment of eye contact, during which you try to silently communicate. "Please go easy." Gaius responds by swinging his wooden gladius directly at your skull. Crack. You block, technically. It still rattles your teeth and sends your elbow into orbit. Your stance crumples like bad parchment. "Footwork," the centurion yells. You fight like a drunken goat. You reset. Gaius swings again. This time, it hits your ribs. You hear a sound you've never heard before. It might be internal. It might be important. "Again!" shouts the centurion. "You think the Gauls will tickle you into submission?" You'd honestly prefer that. After 10 minutes, your arms are shaking. After 20, they've filed a complaint with the gods. After 30, Gaius lands a shot that takes your breath, your balance, and possibly a small part of your soul. You collapse onto your back and stare at the sky, wondering how clouds can look so smug. The centurion leans over you. "Get up," he says. "Or should I tell the enemy you're already dead?" You want to respond. Maybe something witty, maybe something brave. Instead, you just groan and flop onto your side like a stunned fish. Gaius offers you a hand. You hesitate. He grins. "Come on," he says. "I only go full force on the third day." You're not sure if he's joking. He helps you up anyway. Your dignity remains on the ground, wheezing. Then it's your turn to attack. You swing wildly. Gaius blocks it with a flick of his wrist and counters with a light tap to your thigh that sends you stumbling. You regroup. You try again. This time, he lets you hit him. You land the blow, and for a second, you feel like a god. Then he punches you in the stomach with his shield. You double over, re-evaluating every life choice that led you here, starting with your birth. Shield use, the Centurion barks. You have one. Use it. It's not just a fashion accessory. An hour later, you're soaked in sweat, and possibly some of your own tears. Your tunic clings to your back like wet shame. Your legs tremble. Your sword feels like it's grown teeth and is trying to bite your hand. The Centurion finally calls a break. You drop onto a bench like it's the throne of Jupiter himself. But of course, there's no sitting in the Roman army without consequences. An Optio passes by and sees you slouching. Comfortable? He asks. No, sir. Good, it builds character. You're then assigned to sandbag dragging as a corrective measure. The bags are filled with what feels like volcanic gravel, and you're instructed to move them from one end of the training field to the other, then back, then again, because apparently your posture was disrespectful to Mars. Eventually, you're told to clean your gear. Cleaning involves scraping rust with a rock, oiling leather with animal fat, and polishing your sword using what might actually be sand mixed with regret. You discover that cleaning in the Legion is less about hygiene and more about making sure no one dies from tetanus before battle. That evening, during the meal, your hand trembles so much from exhaustion that you drop your barley porridge. A fellow recruit slides his bowl over and mutters, "Happens to the best of us." You're not sure if he means you or just himself, but you appreciate it anyway. Then someone calls out, "Drill tomorrow at dawn, blunt blades, full speed." You groan. Gaius smiles from across the fire. You wonder if you can fake rabies. Day 2 of training begins with your arms still numb and your confidence hanging by a thread. At breakfast, you try to lift your barley lump to your mouth, but your shoulder protests with the melodrama of a Greek tragedy. You spill some of your sour wine, which soaks into your tunic and makes you smell like a drunk pickled olive. Not that it matters. You're going to sweat it out in 30 minutes anyway. Today's delight? Spear training. That's right, because swords aren't the only way to ruin someone's day. Welcome to the world of the pilum, the Roman throwing spear designed to bend on impact so enemies can't throw it back. Fun fact, you'll probably mess it up before it ever reaches a target. The training yard looks the same as yesterday, muddy, unforgiving, and faintly smelling of blood and boiled cabbage. The Centurion marches out holding a pilum like it's a sacred relic and not just a metal-tipped insult to your coordination. You will throw with precision, he barks, or you will dig latrines until Saturn himself begs for mercy. You line up with the others. Gaius stands next to you again, stretching his massive arms as if they're attached to siege engines. He chuckles under his breath. "Try not to impale yourself," he whispers. You grip the pilum. It's heavier than expected, longer than you imagined, and oddly unbalanced, just like your entire existence since you arrived. The first recruit throws. It soars like a bird and sticks into the straw target with a satisfying thunk. You step forward, deep breath. You aim, you throw. It flips sideways, wobbles through the air like a drunken duck, and lands tip first into the dirt with the enthusiasm of a damp sock. The Centurion stares. "Again," he says flatly. You try again. This time, it doesn't flip. It nosedives and buries itself 2 feet short of the target. One of the recruits politely claps. Gaius nearly dies laughing. "Maybe you're more of a morale officer," he says, wiping tears from his eyes. After 6 throws, your arm is jelly and your ego is soup. The Centurion walks by and mutters, "If you threw like that in Germania, you'd be wearing your own pilum in your chest by sundown." You're reassigned to the remedial formation, which is just a polite way of saying, "These men will definitely die first." Your group is tasked with learning spear thrusts, not throws, just repeated forward stabbing motions. You're lined up in front of straw dummies and told to imagine they're invading barbarians. Frankly, the straw dummies look like they'd have a better chance of survival than you. Step, thrust, recover, the the instructor bellows. You step, you thrust, you sort of recover. Then again, then 30 more times until your wrist feels like it's going to detach and form its own union. One poor soul forgets to recover his spear and ends up poking the recruit next to him in the thigh. There is a scream, a splash of blood, and immediate shouting. The injured man is carried off by two others while the instructor mutters something about natural selection. Later, you're introduced to the testudo formation. Everyone locks shields together, forms a shell-like wall, and slowly advances while jabbing forward with spears. It looks cool in theory. In practice, it's just 40 exhausted, sweaty men shuffling like an angry tortoise with bad knees. The moment one guy sneezes, the whole thing collapses into a pile of curses, bruises, and very personal space violations. By late afternoon, you're told to spar, with real spears. Blunted, technically, but still capable of doing impressive damage to your already fractured pride. You square off against another recruit named Marcus, who has one eye and a twitch that says he's seen things. You try to focus, you thrust, he dodges, he thrusts, you scream, his spear clips your shoulder and you drop your weapon. The instructor sighs so hard it creates wind. "Pick it up," he yells. "Unless you plan on fighting the Gauls with your tears." You pick it up. Dinner that night tastes of defeat and undercooked lentils. Around the fire, someone plays a flute badly while Gaius carves a new handle for his spear using his teeth. You stare at the stars and wonder if your ancestors can see you. If they can, they're probably shaking their heads. You fall asleep with the pilum beside you, its point resting gently against your ankle as a reminder. Tomorrow is javelin relay day. Because apparently, even Roman misery comes with a cardio requirement. Hygiene. A small glimmering hope in an otherwise hopeless camp. You've been training for days, caked in sweat, dust, and possibly the tears of a former recruit. But today is bath day. Finally, you think, something pleasant. Spoiler, it's not. You're marched with your contubernium, that's Latin for group of equally smelly comrades, to the camp bathhouse. It's a large stone structure with an ominous amount of steam hissing from the roof. You imagine warm pools, a gentle soak, maybe even someone offering a back rub with olive oil. What greets you inside is a cloud of man stink so dense it nearly knocks you back into the street. Picture 50 naked legionaries arguing about horse theft while scrubbing each other's backs with bricks. Now imagine every one of them is at least mildly infected with something that ends in dascites. Your first test. Navigating the apoditerium, the changing room. Except there are no lockers. Just a series of pegs for your belongings and a glaring lack of personal space. You strip awkwardly while pretending not to make eye contact with the centurion airing out a boil on his thigh. You fold your tunic neatly, even though it smells like fermented despair. Next comes the frigidarium, the cold room. Why start cold? Because Roman logic dictates that comfort must be earned through suffering. The water is approximately 1 degree above hypothermia. You step in. Your soul leaves your body. A nearby recruit casually dunks himself like a bored walrus. You attempt the same and emerge making sounds usually reserved for shipwreck victims. Then, the tepidarium. Lukewarm water. Not pleasant, not terrible, just aggressively mediocre. Here, you stand around while legionaries talk about which province has the best olives and whether or not a boar counts as cheating in dice games. A man next to you is definitely urinating. He does not make eye contact. Finally, the caldarium, the hot room. And by hot, we mean volcanic. The steam hits your lungs like a gladiator's elbow. You sit on a heated stone bench and immediately begin questioning your life decisions. The man across from you is sweating so much he's basically soup. Someone begins singing. You don't recognize the language, but you're pretty sure it's a prayer for the sweet release of death. You try to relax, but that's impossible because your back is now stuck to the bench and you're 98% certain the guy next to you is plotting a mutiny. Or maybe he's just humming. It's hard to tell when you're boiling from the inside out. Then comes the strigil, the Roman equivalent of a loofah, except it's a curved metal blade used to scrape oil and filth off your skin. You're handed one and told to rub yourself with olive oil first, because apparently the Romans decided that rubbing yourself with salad dressing was the path to cleanliness. You attempt to scrape. It feels like exfoliating with a butter knife made of malice. Gaius, ever enthusiastic, scrapes your back for you. He treats it like derusting a siege engine. You suspect he's enjoying it. "Don't forget the armpits," he says cheerfully while nearly skinning you alive. You survive the strigil, barely. Your skin is red, raw, and smells like olives. You are now clean in the same way a statue is clean, lifeless and slightly chipped. You think it's over. It's not. The latrines await. Oh, the latrines. They're communal. Of course they are. A long stone bench with evenly spaced holes, no partitions, and zero shame. Beneath it, a flowing trench of what can only be described as despair. A stick rests in a bucket nearby with a sponge tied to the end. You stare at it. It stares back. This, you learn, is the Roman answer to toilet paper. One sponge. Many men. Rinsed in vinegar between uses, theoretically. You eye the vinegar bucket. It's murky. You sit, you try to aim. The man next to you asks if you've ever seen the Greek pantomime troupe. You say no. He continues the story anyway, casually holding the communal sponge like a relay baton. You lose your appetite, for life. When you finally finish and stand, you realise there's no wash basin. Just a splash from a nearby bucket and whatever dignity you can scrape together. You vow to never judge a modern public restroom again. Even the worst gas station stall is a 5-star spa compared to this. You leave the bathhouse with cleaner skin and a 1,000-yard stare. Your fellow soldiers pat your shoulder and welcome you to civilization. You feel altered, not better, just different. Later, someone tells you it's good to be clean. You nod slowly and wonder if your soul will ever be clean again. You've made it back to your tent, raw from scraping and still emotionally damp. You lie on your straw mattress and stare at the canvas above, wondering how it's possible to feel simultaneously clean and violated. You close your eyes, but every time you do, the sponge returns. Sleep is fitful. You dream of sponges with teeth. You wake up in a cold sweat, though that could also be the cold air seeping through the tent flap and the fact that your tent mate used the last of the shared blanket. He says he earned it. You say nothing because he's built like a centaur and smells faintly of aggression and onions. Morning comes with the sound of trumpets and another optio bellowing in Latin, which somehow feels louder than yesterday. "Ad lavandum!" he screams. You freeze. Another bath day? Already? Number worse. Laundry day, which, in the Roman legion, means grabbing your tunic, sandals, and whatever dignity you have left, and heading to the communal washing area. Another trench of questionable water and full-body shame. You arrive and are handed a paddle. No explanation. You ask how to wash your clothes. The man next to you grins and slaps his tunic against a rock like it owes him money. Then he dumps it into a vat of what looks like soupy grey disappointment and adds, "Urine." Yes, actual human urine. Because, according to Roman logic, ammonia-rich pee is excellent for getting out blood, sweat, and whatever else you've been fermenting in your clothes. You want to object. You want to say, maybe there's a better way? But instead, you swish your tunic in a pot of last week's communal donation and consider a career change, something less revolting, like corpse disposal. Once you've sloshed, slapped, and screamed internally, you hang your clothes to dry in the sun. You sit in your undergarments on a stone, trying not to make eye contact with the centurion arguing loudly about soap shortages. Apparently, someone used imported soap meant for officers. The investigation begins immediately. There will be consequences. You hope the soap thief finds refuge and possibly a better smelling unit. Back at the latrines, things have taken a turn. Someone borrowed the communal sponge and failed to return it. There's panic. Not because anyone liked the sponge, but because its absence means someone's walking around with it. The centurion demands its return. "Or so help me Jupiter, I will have you all drink vinegar until it comes out your ears." You stand in a silent row of soldiers, clutching your tunic, hoping the sponge reveals itself. It doesn't. Eventually, someone quietly produces a replacement from another camp, a sponge of slightly more respectable lineage. The crisis is averted. For now. As for the bathhouse, it's closed today for ritual purification. Apparently, a decanus slipped on olive oil and tore his dignity. His screams still echo faintly between the stone walls. You wish him a swift recovery, and also wonder if that means you're off the hook for another round of trauma bathing. Nope. You are instead marched down to the river, naked, with your squad, in the middle of the day. This, says the Optio, is nature's bathhouse. You're handed a bar of soap made of lard and ashes and told to scrub efficiently. The water is glacier-fed, your skin seizes, your lungs revolt. You've never felt cleaner or closer to death. Birds chirp, a goat watches. You don't care. You just want to go home. You wash, you rinse, you emerge. A new man, a broken man, a man who now understands that cleanliness, in Rome, is achieved only through adversity and community nudity. Back at camp, you're allowed to rest, sort of. You're assigned latrine duty, with a bucket and vinegar. You stare at the list of latrine cleaning rotations and realise that your name appears more than once. Apparently, someone bribed the clerk to move their name down. With soap, you add murder clerk to your growing list of future plans. The sun sets. You sit with your contubernium around a fire. No one speaks of the sponge. No one speaks of the river. You share dried figs and stare into the flames. One soldier murmurs, "At least we're clean." You all nod solemnly. And then a new recruit walks by, gleaming with the confidence of someone who has not yet been introduced to Roman sanitation. You look at him, you smile, and you say, "Don't get too comfortable. Tomorrow's sponge day." There's a kind of silence that only happens in places where fear has already arrived. It creeps through the tent flaps before sunrise, settles into the bedding straw, and sits heavy on your chest like an invisible elephant. Today, the silence is loud. You wake to it. No Optio screaming, no armor clanging, just the sound of breath being held across 100 throats. You don't need an oracle to tell you something is wrong. Your tent mates are already sitting up, wide-eyed and wordless. You glance around for clues, as if fear has left a note on someone's shield. Then comes the sound of boots, many boots. "Out! Now!" bellows the Optio, and that's when your soul politely evacuates your body. You scramble to fall in line. You're not alone. The entire century is lined up like sheep who know the butcher's in a bad mood. Even the hard cases, the guys who usually laugh at pain and chew garlic like candy, look like they've seen a ghost. Then the centurion arrives, Lucius Calvus. His name means the bald one, but everyone knows better than to say that out loud. He's got the body of a marble statue, the temperament of a disappointed volcano, and a smile that says, "I once decapitated a man for sneezing during roll call." He carries a staff today, not the vine stick he usually uses for motivational beatings. No, this one is heavier. Personal. He paces slowly down the line, looking each soldier dead in the eyes like he's choosing who gets to meet Pluto early. "At third watch last night," he begins, voice like crushed gravel. "A sentry abandoned his post. That's not just dereliction, that is a rot in the legions. And when we find rot, we cut." You suddenly miss the lice inspection. You miss latrine duty. You miss every miserable thing that came before this moment. "Today," Calvus says, "we remind the gods that the legions are disciplined, that we punish ourselves, that we fear no death, especially not our own." Someone near you exhales too loudly. Calvus doesn't even look at them, just grins. Decimation. And just like that, several men soil themselves in unison. Decimation. You've heard the word before. Everyone has. It's Roman for, "We're serious about team bonding." In practice, it means this. 1 in every 10 men in the unit is selected by lot. That unlucky man is then beaten to death by the other 9, with clubs, sometimes with fists, occasionally with their own shoes, if they're feeling poetic. It's not a punishment for the guilty, it's a punishment for everyone, because Rome believes fear is the glue that keeps the sword sharp. They bring out the straws. Literal ones. Cut from a broom, and probably cursed. Your hands shake as you draw. You look down and see that you've pulled a long straw. Not the longest, but long enough. Relief floods your body like warm wine. Then Antonius, 3 rows over, holds up a piece the size of a matchstick. He doesn't speak. He just blinks, slowly. "Antonius," Calvus says, nodding. "Step forward." He does, like he's dreaming. The other 9 from his contubernium are handed clubs. Their faces go blank. You expect someone to protest, but nobody does. That's not how this works. Protest gets you clubbed next. And then it happens. No speeches, no ceremony, just 9 men beating one of their own into the afterlife under the dawn sky, while the rest of the unit watches. Some look away, some watch every second. You feel sick. You are sick. When it's over, they drag the body away and rinse the blood off the dirt. The Optio claps twice. Form up for drills. You blink. What? But that's the thing about the Roman legions. There's no pause button. One man's death is another man's warm-up. By mid-morning, you're practicing shield formations like nothing happened. Step, thrust, pivot, scream, again, again, again. Antonius is already a memory. But the message lingers, carved into your spine. That night, nobody talks. The fire burns lower than usual. You huddle close to the warmth, as if proximity will keep the gods from noticing you. One soldier, barely out of puberty, quietly carves tally marks into his dagger handle. When asked what they're for, he says, "Days I didn't die." You don't laugh, you count your own. And when you finally lie down on your straw mat, eyes heavy, bones sore, you find yourself praying, not for victory, not for survival, but for a long straw. Tomorrow is just another roll of the dice. So, you survived decimation. Congratulations. You weren't clubbed into a crimson smear by your friends. That puts you in the upper percentile of legionary achievement. But don't celebrate just yet, because now comes the part the historians call unit cohesion, and the soldiers call, "Please stop aiming javelins at my head." Trust in the Roman army is not earned gently. It is forged like a sword, through pressure, repetition, screaming, and the occasional missing limb. You start the morning with what's cheerfully referred to as a team-building exercise. You'll be blindfolded, spun around until you're unsure which planet you're on, and then ordered to march in formation while the Optio throws insults, sticks, and possibly bees at you. If you flinch, you repeat it. If you trip, you repeat it. If you whisper, "This seems excessive," you repeat it while holding a 40-pound stone. You're partnered with Claudius, who once claimed to have punched a wolf. You suspect it was actually a goat, but you don't challenge the story because his handshake feels like being caught in a bear trap. Claudius doesn't talk much, except to mutter the occasional threat at his own boots. He's the closest thing you've got to a friend now. Your first task, navigate a narrow ravine blindfolded, holding onto the shoulder of the soldier in front of you. The terrain is uneven, the rocks are slippery, and somewhere up ahead, the Optio is blowing a horn that sounds suspiciously like a donkey being murdered. You slip. Claudius yanks you upright with one hand like you weigh nothing. "Focus," he says. You nod, even though he can't see it. Your teeth clench tighter with every step. A man behind you falls and is immediately trampled by the rest of the formation. You think you hear a rib snap. The Optio does not stop the exercise. In fact, you hear him laugh. Next up, the trust catch. You stand on a platform made of 2 barrels and some wishful thinking. Behind you, your squad mates stand with arms outstretched. You are to fall backward into their embrace, demonstrating confidence in the strength and loyalty of your unit. You glance back. 3 of them are glaring at you for taking the last heel of bread last night. One is scratching his armpit with a dagger. One is asleep standing up. You fall anyway, because not falling is also punishable. You are caught, barely. Someone's thumb ends up in your ear. Someone else gasps, "By Jupiter's hemorrhoids!" You hit the ground in a heap, bruised, but technically alive. Success. Then comes javelin drills. Only now, instead of aiming at straw targets, you're aiming at shields held by your squad mates. Live targets, real consequences. You can't help but notice that the shields are splintered and the men holding them are sweating like pigs in a spice market. Claudius goes first. He throws with deadly precision. The javelin thuds into the shield with a terrifying crack. The man holding the shield doesn't flinch. Applause. Mutual respect. Your turn. You step forward. Your javelin feels heavier than usual. You take aim at Lucius, who once stole your socks, but also saved your life during swamp training. Conflicted, you squint. You throw. It wobbles like a drunk seagull and misses the shield entirely, grazing Lucius's shoulder. He yells something unrepeatable, and the Optio steps in, nodding approvingly. Very good. Now switch. You're now the target. Great. Lucius grins the grin of a man who's waited days for this. He throws. You barely manage to get the shield up in time. The impact rattles your bones. Your ears ring. You briefly question your life's choices, your lineage, and whether sandals can absorb trauma. After lunch, which is less a meal and more a punishment involving cold lentils and sour wine, you begin the final exercise, defensive digging. Each man must dig a foxhole, then dive into it while dodging mock attacks from fellow soldiers throwing clumps of earth and sticks at your head. You'd laugh if it weren't for the fact that one of those sticks has a nail in it. Claudius gets through his in record time. You, however, discover that the soil is mostly rock and regret. Your shovel bends, your fingers blister. You are yelled at for laziness, cowardice, and having the digging skills of a Gallic poet. By sunset, you're coated in mud, bruises, and existential dread. Your arm barely works, your eye twitches involuntarily, and your thighs feel like they've been individually cursed by Mars himself. But when you collapse by the campfire, your squad mates nod at you with something like respect. One of them passes you a half-burned onion. You chew slowly. It tastes like teamwork. Claudius sits beside you. You didn't die, he says. Good. You grunt, which he accepts as gratitude. And then, for the first time in days, you sleep. Not because you're safe, but because your body physically refuses to stay awake. Welcome to the legions. Trust is mandatory. Survival, optional. The sun sinks like a stabbed orange behind the hills, casting long, ridiculous shadows across the camp. Shadows that make tents look like funeral pyres and fellow soldiers like demons hunched over soup bowls. You sit on a log. It might be a bench. It might also be a petrified donkey. Doesn't matter. Your legs are too sore to care. Dinner is served. Salted meat so dry it could be used to patch sails, barley bread dense enough to anchor a galley, and something green that may have once been a vegetable, or maybe a lizard. You gnaw it all between cracked teeth, silently hoping this meal won't end in gastrointestinal betrayal like the last three. The cohort gathers, some by firelight, others by force of habit. You sit shoulder to shoulder with men who smelled bad even before the week began, and who now reek like the underarm of Jupiter himself. But proximity breeds camaraderie, or at least a shared understanding that no one is washing those socks anytime soon. The fire crackles, someone coughs, someone else passes around a jug of wine that tastes like spoiled vinegar and battlefield sweat. No one complains. At least it's wet. And then, inevitably, it begins. The worst was Gaul, says Marcus, a grizzled veteran with a nose shaped like a collapsed tent and teeth that suggest a complicated relationship with apples. He pokes the fire with a stick like it owes him money. Snow so deep it swallowed the mules, had to eat our belts, tasted like fear and goat. Everyone nods solemnly, including you, even though you didn't understand half of that. You're not even sure if he said snow or snails. Doesn't matter. He's earned the right to ramble. Tiberius took a javelin to the leg, he continues. Didn't flinch, just pulled it out and beat the guy with it. Someone whistles. Someone else quietly vomits into a sack. You shift closer to the fire, hoping the warmth will chase away the image of Tiberius bludgeoning a man with his own shin injury. Tell them about the elephants, says Claudius, already grinning. You suspect this story is either deeply heroic or deeply stupid. Marcus nods. Germania, night patrol, fog thick enough to drown in, heard a noise, low and growling. We thought it was bears. Turned out to be Publius snoring into his helmet. We nearly speared him to death. Laughter erupts, nervous, uneven, relief disguised as amusement. You laugh too. You have to. It's that, or remember your own nightmares from last night, when you dreamed your bunkmate turned into a wolf and demanded your bread ration. As the fire settles into glowing coals, stories darken too. Ever seen a man eaten alive by ants? Asks Lucius, stirring the embers. Everyone goes quiet. No, he says. Keep marching east, you will. And that's the moment you realise this isn't just story time. It's coping time. It's therapy with splinters. It's how men who've seen their friends dismembered in muddy fields keep from screaming until their lungs turn inside out. You stare into the fire, hoping it has answers. You remember your mother's kitchen, warm, loud, always smelling of herbs and shouting. You remember your father's hands, rough but steady, fixing sandals or slapping you upside the head for good measure. You remember the girl at the bakery with the crooked smile. You wonder if she still smiles like that. Claudius nudges you. Your turn. You blink. I don't have any stories. He frowns. Everyone does. Or you will. You hesitate, then say, Once, I fell in a well. Silence. How deep? Marcus asks, dead serious. Deep enough I had to bribe the rope guy to pull me out. They nod. Someone pats your shoulder. Classic, says Lucius. Apparently that qualifies. The fire burns low. The stars emerge like curious ghosts, listening in. One by one, men drift to sleep, curled in cloaks that smell like regret and mildew. You stay up a bit longer, staring into the red glow, feeling its heat on your face and its loneliness in your chest. You think about how tomorrow you'll march another 12 miles, maybe fight, maybe not, maybe dig trenches, maybe die in one. But tonight, you're here, among brothers who snore like oxen, fart like demons, and somehow make you feel less alone. You lie back on the dirt. It's cold, it's hard, it's all you have. You close your eyes, pretending the fire will stay lit forever. Sleep in the Roman camp is an act of defiance. You wrap your cloak tighter around you, nestling into a divot in the earth that might have once been a rodent's grave. Someone next to you snores like a malfunctioning siege engine. Someone else sleep talks in Greek. You try not to imagine what they're dreaming of. You've got your own problems. Your eyes drift closed, and the fire's glow dances on the insides of your lids. Your last thought before slipping under is, if a scorpion crawls into my ear tonight, I'm just giving up. Then, dreams. You're home again, not the camp, not this muddy, lice-infested sweat hive. Home. The sun is soft. Your mother is yelling about something, probably you. Bread bakes in the oven, actual bread with crust and everything, not this reconstituted field biscuit you've been chewing on for 5 days. There's a smell in the air, basil or safety. You see the girl from the olive market. The one who called you boy, even though you were 18 and already growing patchy stubble that could technically qualify as a beard if you squinted. She's laughing. At you? With you? Doesn't matter. Her laugh is the only music you miss more than your own name. And then the dream shifts. You're back in the field. There's a scream. A man falls next to you, clutching his side. Blood pours like wine, like something precious being wasted. You try to stop it with your bare hands. He looks at you. He doesn't blink. He doesn't cry. He just whispers, "Tell my mother I smelled nice." You wake up gasping. The fire is ash. The night is a thick wool blanket of cold. All around you, the camp breathes in sync, snoring, coughing, shifting under cloaks. A few figures pace quietly between tents, sentries with torches, eyes sunken from sleep debt and paranoia. They nod at you if you look long enough, but they never smile. You sit up. Your back cracks like poorly fired pottery. Your feet are numb, but also somehow itchy. Your skin feels like it's been insulted by the wind. Welcome to rest in the Roman army. The stars are still out, scattered like salt across a blackened table. You remember a story. The gods spilled salt once, trying to season the clouds. The old man in your village used to tell it before his mind unraveled like a dropped scroll. You think about writing home, if you had parchment, or ink, or fingers that didn't feel like they were carved from frozen goat meat. You imagine what you'd say, "Mother, I'm alive. Mostly. I've seen 3 people lose fingers, 1 man lose his mind, and 2 men fall in love with the same sheep. Please send socks." Instead, you lie back down and whisper to the sky, "Let me get through tomorrow." That's the prayer of the soldier. Not for glory, not for victory, just for one more morning. You don't know what you expected when you joined. Honor, land, citizenship, all technically on the table, next to a bunch of other things, like the head of a rebel from Thrace or a scorpion the size of your hand. But here, in the dark, with your breath fogging up like a dying campfire, all you want is to feel like a human again. You hear rustling, you stiffen. A raccoon, a thief, a very small barbarian. No, it's just Lucius. He's carrying a blanket and his piss pot. He waves at you. You wave back. No words. Too late for those. Words are a luxury. Out here, gestures do the talking. You close your eyes again. This time, the dream doesn't come. Just dark, and the occasional memory flickering through like torchlight in fog. Your cousin slipping on a fish. The bakery smell in spring. That time you tripped on your own toga during a parade. Morning creeps in on its belly. The drum will sound soon. Another day of drills, screaming, sweating, marching, and trying not to die of boredom or actual violence. Another day of pretending that this is normal, that your feet don't hurt, that your soul isn't halfway convinced it's already left the building. But for now, you lie still, a soldier in the dirt, a body beneath a sky too wide to care, and the forest birds begin to sing, mocking you maybe, or just reminding you that the world keeps turning whether you march or not. You sigh. Another day in the glorious Roman legions. You wake up to the smell of something burning. For a moment you think it's breakfast. Then you remember, this is a Roman military camp. The only thing on fire is your last shred of optimism. Out near the centre of camp, a priest is mumbling incantations in Latin while holding a squirming chicken upside down. The bird flaps indignantly, which is fair. You'd flap too if someone dangled you over a stone altar while chanting about Jupiter's divine wrath and whether or not today is a good day to be stabbed with a spear. A small crowd gathers. Soldiers rub the sleep from their eyes, clutch barley cakes, and squint at the ceremonial drama. You join them because there's nothing else to do. Morning rituals are required. You're hoping the gods are feeling merciful today. Maybe they'll grant you a lucky augury. Maybe your unit won't be marching 30 miles uphill both ways. Maybe your sandals won't give you trench foot. Maybe pigs will fly. The priest's assistant, a boy who looks like he's seen too many entrails and not enough joy, slits the chicken's throat. It squawks one last complaint and bleeds onto the sacred stone. Then the augur, a man with one eyebrow and the general vibe of a bored librarian, digs into the bird's corpse like he's checking for spare change. Everyone leans in. You squint at the glistening pile of chicken giblets and realise you have no idea what you're looking for. Is that a lucky spleen? An unlucky gizzard? Does it spell doom in cursive? The augur frowns. He prods the liver with a stick. Then he stands and clears his throat. Portentum malum, he says. Translation, bad omen. Fantastic. Immediately your Optio looks like someone told him Jupiter personally insulted his mother. He starts barking orders, voice rising an octave. Latrine duties are reassigned. Weapon drills are doubled. You are now required to scrub your armour until it shines like Apollo's backside, whatever that means. Your name is on the latrine list. Again, you glance at the god's altar. The chicken guts seem to be mocking you. The latrines are not, technically, the worst job in the camp. That honour goes to latrine cleaner during food poisoning week, but it's a close second. You arrive with a bucket, a rag, and 1,000 regrets. The air is tangible. If despair had a smell, it would be this. Your sandals squelch ominously in the mud near the trench. Somewhere, a fly dies of sadness. Scrubbing begins. The trench is deep and long, built with Roman precision. Even your waste is militarily efficient. You try not to think about what you're touching. You try not to breathe too deeply. You try to imagine you're polishing a mosaic in a wealthy villa and not scraping dried horrors off a communal wooden bench that's seen more rears than a gladiator stadium. A centurion walks by, sniffs, and mutters, Ave servus cloacarum. Hail, sewer servant. You smile weakly. He's making a joke. Probably. Maybe. Half an hour later, your arms ache. Your dignity is in critical condition, and your bucket is now a sentient being with war crimes on its conscience. You pause for a moment and look up at the clouds. Why me? You whisper. The clouds do not respond. Jupiter is ghosting you. After latrine duty, you're allowed to wash your hands in a trough already used by 36 other soldiers who also scrubbed their own disasters. The soap is a handful of ashes and hope. You sit on a nearby stone and stare at your hands. They still smell faintly of chicken and misery. A fellow soldier named Marcus plops down beside you. "Bad augury?" he asks. "Worse than usual," you mutter. He nods. "Last month they found a frog in the wine. Priest said it meant divine retribution. We marched to the Alps and lost 4 men to frostbite." "So you're saying it could be worse?" "Oh, much worse," Marcus says cheerfully. "Last year they read the guts wrong and declared victory before the battle started. The enemy read the same guts and came to the same conclusion. We both attacked at once. Confusing day." You blink at him. "Who won?" Marcus shrugs. "The vultures, mostly." You laugh, because what else can you do? The gods clearly don't care. The priests might be guessing. And the chicken is dead either way. Somewhere behind you a trumpet sounds. Time for formation. You sigh, stand up, and hope your sandals don't betray you mid-march. Because if there's one thing you've learned by now, it's not the gods who'll kill you. It's the chicken. You wake up to the sound of squawking. Again, a rooster is being wrestled toward the camp altar by a priest who looks like he lost a bet with the gods and now has to serve them full time. You're groggy, sore, and mildly sunburned in places you didn't think could burn. And now, thanks to the divine schedule, you're also spiritually obligated to witness a bird get turned into a divine email. The augur is a short, stocky man with a permanent scowl and arms covered in soot and chicken scratches. His tunic is more bloodstained than fabric. His assistant holds the unfortunate bird aloft as the augur prepares his sacred dagger. A crowd of legionaries watches silently. Some are genuinely curious about what the bird's guts will say. Others, like you, are just trying to stand still without passing out or sneezing. Superstition says if you sneeze during the ritual, it counts as bad luck for your whole tent. The chicken lets out a final offended squawk. The augur does his work. Then he begins prodding at the organs like he's taste testing a soup. He mutters. He frowns. He squints at the liver, then the heart, then back at the liver. You exchange glances with your tent mate Lucius. "Let me guess," Lucius whispers. "The gods say it's a bad day for latrine duty and anyone named Marcus." "I'm named Marcus," you hiss. "Then you should have brought your own chicken." The augur finally raises a hand. "The omens," he says gravely, "are inconclusive." A collective groan ripples through the soldiers. One man at the back audibly mutters, "They're always inconclusive." He is immediately sentenced to 3 hours of silent mule brushing. Still, the augur decides to err on the side of caution, which means doubling down on sacrifices. Another chicken is brought in, then a pig, then a goat that looks personally offended to be here. The morning devolves into a parade of livestock and increasingly bizarre entrail interpretations. By the time it's over, the air smells like a butcher's stall during a heat wave. You're lightheaded from hunger and divine ambiguity. The centurion calls you to drill anyway. In the afternoon, you're baking in the sun while marching in formation and trying to ignore the smell of dried blood stuck in your nostrils. Your gladius feels heavier today. Maybe it's the heat. Maybe it's the divine existential crisis. Your unit stumbles through maneuvers on the parade ground. The Optio, now hoarse from yelling since sunrise, finds new creative ways to imply that you all march like drunken goats wearing sandals full of bees. One recruit collapses, another nearly vomits. Still, no mercy. At water break, Lucius sidles up beside you. "Tell me honestly," he says, "you think the gods actually care about our marching formations?" You shrug. Maybe they do. Maybe they just like chickens. And that night, you sit around the fire with the rest of your tent, spooning lukewarm barley gruel into your mouth while the topic inevitably returns to omens. One of the veterans, an older soldier with a scar that looks like Italy, insists that divine signs are everywhere. Bird lands on your right shoulder, good luck. Left shoulder, bad luck. Bird misses your shoulder and poops on your head, extremely bad luck. Sounds more like extremely bad aim, Lucius mutters. The veteran continues. I once served with a man who ignored the omens. You know what happened to him? You lean in. He died. No, the veteran says. He got transferred to accounting, spent the rest of his career doing math in Gaul. Worse than death. Later, back in your tent, you lie on your cot and stare up at the fabric ceiling. The wind rustles the flap. Somewhere, a priest chants. Somewhere else, a goat probably regrets its life choices. You think about the gods, not just the big ones like Jupiter or Mars, but the little ones, the household spirits, the kitchen gods, the field gods, the ones that might still be listening when you mutter under your breath. You whisper a short prayer. Please, no chicken guts tomorrow. Just let us sleep. No answer, of course, but the wind shifts, cooler, calmer. You close your eyes and almost believe it's a sign. Then, in the distance, squawk, you sigh. The gods have a cruel sense of humour. You're asleep, or close enough to it, curled up on your straw-stuffed sleeping mat, wrapped in your woolen cloak, dreaming about something warm, soft, and not covered in fleas. Your spine has just accepted the shape of a half-buried rock beneath your tent floor when the horn blows. One long, angry blast. You jolt upright, mouth full of stale breath and panic. Around you, men groan, curse, scramble. The tent flap whips open. The Optio's silhouette appears against the pale torchlight like some kind of vengeful statue. Up! Armour on! Move like you mean it! You want to ask why. You really do. But you've learned by now that the Roman military doesn't believe in explanations, or mercy, or sleep. You grab your sandals first. Always the sandals. You learned that the hard way during your first surprise march, scrambling to find your belt while half the cohort trampled your foot into pudding. Now, the moment the horn sounds, you're a footwear-first kind of man. You throw on your tunic, cinch your belt, slide into your lorica segmentata. It's still damp from yesterday's sweat. Somehow it smells like boiled socks and regret. The helmet goes on next. It's heavy, dented, and definitely one size too small. Then, the backpack. 60 pounds of sheer Roman optimism. Inside, dried rations, cooking gear, spare sandals, a small shovel, and a week's worth of emotional baggage. You throw it over your shoulder and immediately lose feeling in your right arm. Outside, the camp is chaos, organised just enough to qualify as order. Torches bob through the darkness. Shields clatter. Legionaries curse in several dialects of Latin. Someone throws up into a bush. The bush throws up back. You fall in line. Your cohort gathers at the gate like angry cattle, heads down, armour clinking. The centurion appears, eyes gleaming under the moonlight. He doesn't speak. He just raises a hand. And then the march begins. The first mile is denial. You tell yourself this is just a drill. A short one, maybe 2 miles max. Stretch the legs. Impress the officers. Then back to your mouldy mat and your dreams of goat cheese and private bathrooms. But then you pass the 2nd mile marker, then the 3rd. By the 5th mile, denial has turned into negotiation. You begin offering things to the gods. Jupiter, if we stop before sunrise, I'll sacrifice something expensive, like a whole chicken with herbs. At mile 6, you step in something. You don't look down. You never look down. The night air is cold, but you're sweating anyway. The stars above are bright, mocking you with their effortless twinkling. The moon is too quiet. Everything is too quiet, except for the sound of thousands of iron-nailed sandals crunching gravel and the occasional whisper of a man trying not to cry. Mile 8 is when your feet start talking to you. Left foot. Hey, remember when we didn't have blisters? Right foot. I miss that. I miss feeling. I miss joy. Left foot. We should run away. Right foot. We're already running, just in place, forever. Your thighs are jelly. Your shoulders feel like they've been personally insulted by Mars himself. The strap of your helmet digs into your forehead like it's trying to learn your thoughts by osmosis. Behind you, Lucius mutters, I think I left my soul back at camp. You nod. I think I left my toes at mile 4. At mile 11, a man ahead of you collapses. Not dramatically, just folds like a poorly made toga and lands in a pile. A medic rushes over, checks his pulse, waves for a pair of auxilia to drag him off the road. No one stops marching. You think about falling too, just a little fall. A whoops, my ankle betrayed me sort of stumble. You fantasize about being carried on a stretcher, maybe with a wet cloth on your head, maybe a little sympathy. Then you remember what happened to the last guy who faked a faint. The centurion made him march double the next day, naked, with a chicken tied to his helmet. So you march. At mile 15 you hallucinate. You see a tavern, a warm hearth, a kind-eyed woman offering you soup. You reach out and touch Lucius's sweaty elbow. Don't, he says. That's the third time tonight. At mile 17 the sun begins to rise. Not gently, rudely. Blinding, sudden, unkind. You squint, hating the light, the heat, and your own continued existence. The Optio shouts, "Only 3 more miles." Someone whimpers. At mile 20, your feet no longer feel like yours. They feel like someone else's problem. Maybe a senator's, maybe someone you wronged in a past life. You reach the temporary encampment site. There is no fanfare, no breakfast, no water, just a command, start digging. You drop your gear, pick up your entrenching tool, and realize that somewhere between mile 5 and your first blister exploding, you truly became a Roman legionary. Dead inside, still marching, you've arrived 20 miles through mud, sleep deprivation, and existential reflection. And now you're standing in a random patch of nowhere, surrounded by equally broken men, squinting into the dawn like confused, overcooked vegetables. No one says it, but everyone's thinking the same thing. We made it. That's when the centurion barks, "Pickaxes and shovels. We dig." The mood drops like a pylon from Olympus. Your hands tremble as you strap the shovel to your aching forearm. You already smell like a goat that's been rolled in vinegar and shame, and now you're going to dig latrines for a camp that might only exist for 12 hours. That's Roman efficiency for you. Conquer, march, dig holes, maybe die, repeat. You begin hacking into the earth. It's clay, hard, compact, the kind of ground that makes you believe the gods hate you personally. Each stroke of the shovel vibrates up your arms and into the hollow space where your dreams used to live. Lucius beside you is weeping, not sobbing, just quiet, manly leaking. His tears make tiny dust circles in the dirt. "I joined to see the world," he mutters. "I thought there would be olive oil, theatre, bread with texture." You nod. You too once had ambitions. But now your ambition is just to dig a trench that won't collapse when someone relieves themselves into it. You break for a moment and lean on your shovel. The Optio appears as if summoned by laziness. "Why are you standing like a senator at a bathhouse?" he growls. You mutter something about your spine. He stares at you. "Dig faster, or you'll be cleaning latrine trenches with your tongue." You're not sure if he's joking, and you're too tired to find out. So you dig, and dig. Around noon, the sun becomes a sentient death ray. Your helmet acts like a miniature oven for your brain. You consider taking it off, just for a breath of air, until you see a man 2 rows down get cracked on the skull by a falling shovel. Instant karma. He's fine, but his pride is gone forever. The hole you're digging is supposed to be for drainage, but it's quickly filling with sweat and a little bit of your will to live. Meanwhile, in the next trench, a new recruit named Felix keeps vomiting. "Didn't boil his water," someone mutters. Classic Felix. Midday meal arrives. Sort of. A slave walks past, throwing out hunks of bread like he's feeding ducks. You catch one. It's half burned, half raw, and definitely stolen from a museum exhibit on Neolithic suffering. You gnaw it silently. It tastes like charcoal and regret. Someone passes around sour wine. You sip. It's more vinegar than relief, but your stomach stops threatening mutiny for at least 10 minutes. You sit on a rock, hunched like an old turtle, and glance around. Every man here looks the same. Dirt-streaked, sunburned, haunted. You're all united by shared trauma and toe blisters that deserve their own military honours. Then a horn sounds. Another one. Everyone freezes. "Marching orders?" Lucius asks, eyes wide. "No," you say, praying. "Please no." But it's worse. "Drill formation," yells the Optio. "Armour on, peeler ready, formation in 5. You consider dying on the spot, just collapsing like that guy from chapter 3, but you know better now. That guy is still running laps. The next hour is a blur of fake combat. You stab straw dummies while instructors shout insults about your form. You march in tight formation under the sun until your shadow leaves you out of spite. You throw your pilum so many times your shoulder feels like it's been yanked out and reattached with fish twine. Your centurion corrects your stance by smacking your thigh with the flat of his sword. You thank him, you don't know why. Evening comes, you're not done. Now it's camp maintenance, realigning the ditch perimeter, patching tents, cleaning weapons. There's always something. Even if nothing's broken, the Roman military believes in fixing things until they snap just out of principle. At one point, you're told to stack rocks. Why, you ask? Discipline, says the Optio. You stack the rocks, you unstack the rocks. Then you stack them again. This is your life now. At last, at long delirious last, you're dismissed. You collapse beside your tent, still in full gear, face first into the dirt. The sun is setting. Your bones no longer obey you. Your sandals have fused with your skin. The air smells like sweat, wet wool, and men who've stared into the abyss and found it was mostly made of latrine fumes. Someone across the camp begins to snore, loudly, proudly. You hate him with a passion that transcends borders and language. You close your eyes. You don't expect to sleep, you expect to disintegrate, but as your consciousness slips away, you hear the faint sound of another horn in the distance, and suddenly you remember, this is only day 5. You've got 2 more to go, assuming your feet don't abandon ship first. It's here, the thing you were promised, the thing every citizen turned legionary was told to prepare for. Glory, combat, honor, or, as the centurion calls it, organized chaos with extra stabbing. You're woken up at dawn by a trumpet that sounds more like a dying donkey than a call to arms. The Optio kicks your cot and yells, "Armor on! Formation in 10! Leave your tears in the tent!" You lurch upright and immediately regret it. Your entire body is made of bruises and stale bread. You fumble into your armor, leather and metal plates that somehow feel heavier today, and scramble for your helmet, which you discover is still filled with yesterday's sweat and one mysterious pebble. You step outside and join the line. The air is tense. No jokes today. Just the sound of sandals crunching on dirt, clanking gear, and a lot of anxious throat clearing. The centurion walks past. Eyes front. Today we show them why Rome rules the world. Someone behind you mutters, "Is it the plumbing?" You suppress a laugh. Barely. Then come the orders. March forward. Formation in testudo. Shields up. And so you march. Toward the horizon. Toward the smell of smoke, toward the very real possibility of your last bowel movement being public. You crest a hill and see them, the enemy. They don't look like demons. They look like people, hairy people, angry people, yelling things you can't understand and waving axes and spears like they've just been told Rome cancelled breakfast. Your legs betray you first. They turn into jelly, useless, trembling jelly. You can feel your heart trying to escape through your spine. The trumpet blares again. Now you're moving. Not because you want to, but because the man behind you is pushing, and the one in front is pulling, and you are a small, terrified gear in a very large, terrifying war machine. Your cohort halts, shields lock, pilum raised. The enemy charges. It's not elegant. It's not cinematic. It's just noise and motion and the sudden realization that someone will absolutely die today, and your only goal is to make sure it's not you. The centurion shouts, "Throw!" You launch your javelin with all the strength of a half-broken donkey. It arcs beautifully and impales a bush. That bush will never menace anyone again. You hear a scream nearby. You hope it's the enemy. You really do. Then the front lines collide. Steel clashes, people fall, mud flies. You raise your shield just in time to deflect a blow. The force of it reverberates up your arm and into your soul. You swing your sword, wildly without aim, and clip someone's shoulder, probably a friend. You don't look back. There's no room for finesse. Just stabbing, blocking, screaming, surviving. The guy next to you slips in the mud. Gone. The one on the other side takes a spear to the thigh and howls like a banshee. You want to help? You really do, but you also really don't want to die. A huge man, shirtless, screaming, eyes full of fire, charges at you. You squeal. It's not dignified, it's not brave, and it's not even a real word. You stab forward in a panic and hit his shoulder. He howls, stumbles, falls. You did it. You, a guy who once cried because your sandal got wet, took down a barbarian. And then you vomit a little in your helmet. The battle rages on, but you barely notice. It's just survival now. You block, you swing, you duck, you pray. You trip over a fallen comrade and land in what you sincerely hope is just mud. You've never wanted to go home so badly in your life. You think about farming, about grain, about cows, even about that one goat who used to headbutt your thigh. That goat never tried to disembowel you with a rusty spear. You miss him. Finally, the trumpet sounds again. 3 blasts. Retreat, number victory. You slump to your knees, covered in blood, only some of it yours, and stare at the battlefield. Bodies everywhere, some groaning, some not. You survived. You lived through your first real combat, and all you feel is tired, not triumphant, not heroic, just exhausted. Lucius limps over and drops beside you. "Did you see me?" he says, eyes wide. "I think I stabbed a guy. I think it was important. Or maybe he was already dead. Still counts, right?" You nod. It all counts. You made it. Kind of. You lie back in the mud and look at the sky. And for the first time all day, you smile. Because tomorrow it's someone else's turn to clean the latrines. Congratulations. You survived. But there's no feast. No parade. No woman in a white toga offering you a laurel wreath. Instead, you get a new assignment from your centurion. Strip the dead. That's not a metaphor. That's not even an exaggeration. It's literal. Your reward for not dying in combat is rifling through bodies that did. You don't ask questions, you just nod and move. Because asking questions in the Roman legion is how you end up digging your own grave, and not in the poetic sense. You trudge out onto the blood-soaked field with a sack over your shoulder and a smell in your nose that may never leave. Sunlight bounces off broken spears, bent helmets, and very dead faces. Some of them look peaceful. Others look surprised. You try not to look at all. Lucius is beside you, humming a tune like he's collecting seashells. "Found a nice dagger," he says cheerfully. "Guy didn't even use it. Shame, really." You say nothing. You're too focused on trying not to vomit into your own sandals. You kneel beside a fallen soldier, Gaulish, judging by the plaid. His eyes are open. You close them gently. It feels like the right thing to do, even if no one told you to. You remove his belt, take his blade, and tuck it into the sack. You pause when you see a small wooden charm tied around his neck. It's a carving of a bear. Nothing fancy, just something that someone, somewhere, once gave him. You leave it, not because it's sacred, because it's his. The cleanup takes hours, maybe days. Time stops functioning normally when you're ankle deep in someone else's last stand. There's a rhythm to it, if you can stomach it. Check the body, strip the valuables, stack the weapons, drag the armor, move on. Over and over, until the sun is a burning coin above your head, and your skin is sticky with the sweat of ghosts. By midday, the crows arrive. They perch on broken helmets, watch with beady eyes, and squawk like judgmental librarians. You try to shoo them off once. One just stares at you like it knows what you did in Gaul. Never trust a crow. Back in camp, the smiths are already at work. Armor is melted down. Swords are beaten back into shape. Shields are repainted. Everything is recycled, because nothing in Rome is wasted, especially not a good killing. The priests walk the field last, muttering chants and tossing incense that smells like old socks and despair. They say it's to cleanse the spirits. You're pretty sure no spirit wants to hang around here. That night, the camp is quiet. Not the good kind of quiet like after a festival, the heavy kind, the kind that presses against your ribs. You sit by the fire with your mess of barley and boiled lentils, and for once, even Lucius doesn't joke. "Do you think they had names?" he asks finally, poking at his bowl like the lentils might bite him. "The ones we fought?" You shrug. "Probably." He nods. "Wonder if they were told we were monsters." You both stare at the fire for a while. Later, in your tent, you pull out the dagger you took from the Gaul. You clean it with a scrap of linen and wrap the hilt in leather. It's a good blade, better than yours. You decide to keep it, not as a trophy, as a reminder that the man who held it probably wanted to live just as much as you did. The next day, you're back to drills like nothing happened. Marching, formation, weapons practice. The centurion yells about foot placement while the blood on your sandals hasn't even dried. A new recruit arrives, fresh-faced, wide-eyed, carrying more hope than he should. He looks at you like you're a veteran. You suppose you are now. He asks, "Was it scary?" You think about that moment on the battlefield, the scream, the panic, the man you stabbed, the bush you murdered, the part of you that still hasn't unclenched. You nod. Terrifying. He swallows hard and looks straight ahead. Good. Better he knows now. That evening, you write in the dirt with a stick. Not words, just shapes, lines, circles. Something to remind yourself that you're still a person, that you're more than a weapon in someone else's hand. Lucius joins you, flops down and groans. They say we'll be moving out tomorrow. New campaign, new place, maybe somewhere sunny. You raise an eyebrow. With better food? He laughs. Don't push your luck. You lie down on your cot, stare at the canvas ceiling, and wonder if you'll ever feel clean again. You think of the battlefield, the noise, the silence afterward, and you think, this was just one fight, one day. You've got years to go. Maybe a lifetime, if you're lucky. Or unlucky, hard to tell anymore. 7 days. That's how long you've survived inside the Roman war machine. Somehow. You've avoided death, decimation, dysentery, and accidental skewering by a fellow recruit during sword drills. You are, by every military standard, a qualified survivor. Congratulations. You win a prize, ongoing service, and joint pain. Your body is a collection of aches, bruises, and complaints. Your right foot smells like cheese left too close to a fire. Your left shoulder clicks every time you lift your shield. You've developed a new twitch in your eye, which the medicus says is just stress. He also told someone else their missing teeth were spirit-related, so you're not exactly comforted. The Optio now shouts your name with less venom, possibly because he's lost his voice from yelling at everyone else. Or maybe because you've reached the sweet spot of mediocrity, not good enough to be noticed, not bad enough to be punished. You're invisible. And in the Roman legions, invisibility is a survival tactic. You've stopped asking questions. You've stopped counting days. You measure time now in meals of lentils and instances of sudden screaming in the middle of the night. You've learned to wake up fast, draw your sword half asleep, and only then ask if the screaming was from a drill, a dream, or Gaius stepping on another snake. He screams at butterflies now, just in case. The camp smells worse than you do, which is impressive, honestly. The latrines are overflowing again because someone forgot to dig the proper trenches. Your tent leaks from the top. Every time it rains, you consider defecting to the enemy just for a chance at a dry bed. You've become a master of adaptation. You now know how to patch a sandal using a bone needle, how to start a fire using damp twigs and swearing, and how to sleep through someone being sick 2 feet away. You also know 50 different curse words in Latin, 5 of which are apparently anatomically impossible. You're learning the Legionnaire's real creed. If it doesn't kill you, it'll probably kill the guy next to you, so count your blessings and shut up. It means your armor no longer shines. It has taken on a permanent grime, like it's ashamed to be part of your suffering. Your sword has scratches from that one training session where you tripped over your own shadow. Your helmet smells like boiled cabbage and secrets. And still, you suit up every morning, because that's the rule. There's comfort in the monotony now. Wake up, shovel in food, drill, sweat, swear, sleep, repeat. It's not a life, but it's a rhythm. And rhythm keeps you moving when the only alternative is lying down and crying into your soup, which isn't soup, but more of a suggestion of flavour. The centurion gave a speech today, something about discipline, honour, the glory of Rome. You tried to pay attention, but were too distracted by the beetle crawling across his sandal. It was going in circles, like you. Still, you cheered at the end. Everyone did. That's another thing you've learned. Fake enthusiasm is as good as real so long as you shout loud enough. You don't remember what your voice used to sound like when you weren't yelling. Lucius has taken to carving faces into bits of wood. Keeps the spirits away, he says. You're not sure if he means literal ghosts or mental breakdowns, but either way, he's up to 37 faces. One of them looks suspiciously like the Optio. You say nothing. Your bunkmate Flavius hums songs you've never heard before. He says they're from Hispania, or maybe he makes them up. Doesn't matter. You hum along sometimes. It's the closest thing to music you've had in a week, other than Gaius's nightly muttering, which is less music and more auditory warning sign. You still don't know what day it is. You don't care anymore. Your only calendar is bruises. You saw a flower growing next to the latrine today. Just one. It shouldn't have been there. Wrong soil, wrong light, wrong everything. But it was. Bright. Defiant. Weirdly optimistic. You stared at it longer than you meant to. Then you stepped over it and went back to your post. Tomorrow you'll march again, or dig trenches, or train with blunted weapons while the Optio screams like he's trying to rupture your soul. Or maybe they'll assign you to patrol duty and you'll spend 10 hours walking in a circle wondering if you forgot what home smells like. But tonight you're here, not dead, not okay, but here. And that's something. Retirement is just a spear to the lung away. So you've survived your first week in the Roman legions. That makes you, statistically, a minor miracle. Most new recruits either desert, die, or get reassigned to latrine duty until their souls slip out the back. You, however, are upright, mildly infected, and increasingly numb inside, which, in Roman terms, means you're thriving. The Optio no longer flinches when he sees you. That's progress. Your tent mates no longer bet on how soon you'll cry. Even better. And you've developed what the veterans call the 1,000-yard stare, which is really just your brain quietly exiting your skull to take a break. You eat without chewing now. Not out of efficiency. Your teeth still hurt from the gravel bread. But because you've learned that most food tastes better if you don't give it time to introduce itself. That grey lentil mash? Better as a texture than a flavour. The sour wine? It's vinegar. Don't ask why it fizzes. Every morning you wake up, wiggle your toes to make sure they're still attached, then recite your new motto. Not dead yet. It's not exactly inspiring, but it's honest. And in the legions, honesty is the last luxury no one can afford. Today a message came in from a nearby fort. 2 soldiers were killed in a border skirmish. Nobody we know. The centurion made everyone gather for a solemn speech. He talked about sacrifice, honour, the eternal glory of Rome. Then he told the kitchen staff to use less salt because the supply carts were delayed. The transition was abrupt. Lucius didn't say anything. He just carved another face into a piece of driftwood and placed it with the others. This one had its mouth open like it was screaming. You're pretty sure he's keeping score of sanity loss in wood grain. The new recruits, fresh meat, you now call them, arrived yesterday. You watched them stumble into camp with wide eyes and straight backs, still clinging to the idea that they'll become heroes. You didn't laugh. Not out loud, but internally, you placed bets. One of them asked where the sleeping quarters were. The Optio answered, wherever you collapse. Classic. You've stopped looking forward to anything, which is liberating in a way. Nothing surprises you now. Not the rain, not the drills, not the sudden yelling at midnight. It's all background noise in a symphony of mutual despair. Your only joy is the 10 minutes after dinner when you're too tired to move but not yet required to march. In those 10 minutes, someone might share a story. Gaius, the human rock pile, once claimed he kissed a Vestal virgin. Everyone laughed. He said nothing, then slowly removed a gold pendant from his pouch and held it up. Silence followed. Then he put it away and resumed flossing his teeth with a pine needle. No one's questioned him since. You were almost reassigned today. A higher-ranking officer visited camp and pointed at you while asking a question. The Optio replied, "That one's cursed, but hard-working." Apparently that's a compliment. You stayed put. Someone stole your cloak last night. You woke up freezing and furious. You tracked it down by following the trail of muddy footprints and curses. It was Flavius. He claimed he thought it was his. You considered stabbing him with your spoon. Instead, you took his shoes. Justice, Roman style. A medicus visited from the city today. He examined everyone, told Gaius he had mild foot rot. Gaius shrugged and bit into a raw onion. Flavius was told his rash was likely stress-induced. You were told your back might be permanently bent if you don't stop marching like a pack mule. You nodded, then marched like a pack mule anyway. You dream now in Latin, which you still barely understand. It's mostly shouting and chickens. Once you dreamed of your mother's bread, woke up crying into your helmet. That was awkward. Gaius pretended not to notice. He gets it. Tonight, there's a breeze. It's cold, but clean. You sit outside the tent, staring at the stars, which you haven't had time to do until now. They look the same as they did before you joined, which is both comforting and vaguely insulting. You think about home sometimes, not fondly, just curiously, like, does that tree still lean by the well? Or, did anyone ever fix that squeaky door? You're not sure you'd recognize the place anymore. You're not sure it'd recognize you. The boots are still uncomfortable. The armor still chafes. The latrines still smell like despair and cabbage. But you haven't died. And that means something. Maybe not glory, maybe not honor, but survival. That's rare enough to be impressive. Tomorrow you'll wake up again, march again, eat the same rock bread again, fight maybe, bleed probably, laugh hopefully. And if you're lucky, you'll live to hate every second of it. But you'll live. Av survivor.